Hi guys, welcome back. This week's episode of the Stickman Sessions welcomes London's Ergo Phizmiz to the show. Ergo is a composer, writer, radio producer, homemade opera maker, performer and multimedia artist. His work's been received to critical acclaim around the globe, and he's got a number of different projects under his belt at the moment, but he was kind enough to give us some time to have a chat about creativity and his thoughts on the music industry and the entertainment industry in general. So this is a really good episode. We go in depth on quite a lot of topics. It was a pleasure talking to him, so hope you guys get something out of it, and enjoy. So just like to give a little background then, I guess, if that's all right with you. Could you just sort of tell us a little bit about where you grew up, when you got into music, and what you currently do as an artist?
Well, I grew up in the north of England, around lots of organ music, and being surrounded by organ music led me into, over a long time, into writing music. And then when I was a teenager, I became interested in writing operas, and then I did that for a few years, and then I threw them all away, and then didn't do any music for a while. Then in my early 20s I started making electronic music, and then once I hit my 30s my interest in making invigorating music theatre was invigorated. So now I make invigorating music theatre and invigorating electronic music and invigorating pop songs that no one wants to release. And I generally go through life trying to add vigour to the world.
Whereabouts in the north of England did you grow up, sorry?
Near Middlesbrough, I grew up.
Okay, cool. And what do you currently, because obviously the first I had heard of you was through Pete Murphy, who's a big fan of yours, recommended your music and for you to chat to. So I take it, do you do quite a lot of gigs at the moment then, or are you in a quiet patch at the minute?
I kind of gig on and off over periods. I used to play a lot more in the olden days. I used to play around Europe a lot, and then I got more into putting on theatre shows. So we toured various pieces, and then a few years ago I got sick and fell over in an airport, and then sort of in the last year or two I've gone back to performing and putting on productions again, and so I've been doing like monthly things in London at Depressival Presents, which is the night that Lottie Depressival Bowater, my partner, curates, and we put on Nibiru in London, and we're putting on Nibiru at Hackney Old Baths again in December. So
amazing.
Yeah, so there's always lots and lots of things
going on
happening.
For sure. You're based in London currently then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, at the moment.
And so do you think then when you got ill, did your approach to creative stuff change at all, like afterwards?
Only on like a really practical level of having to sort of slow down a bit, I think.
Okay.
But I don't know, it was kind of one of those times of sort of, because if you're sort of deliberately forced out of doing something, if you're sort of by necessity forced out of doing something, then you come to reflect upon it, and then you return stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, I like that. Okay, cool. Well, so I've spent the day kind of listening through bits and bobs of your releases and a couple of your videos and stuff. If it's all right with you, it'd be cool to talk about I might pronounce this wrong. Is it Nibiru, the album?
Yeah.
Have I pronounced that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think so. Your guess is as good as mine as to how it's supposed to be pronounced, but Nibiru sounds about right. I've heard people say Nibiru and things like that. Well, Nibiru sounds better, sounds strong. I think.
Does. Yeah, you're right. So the description on that was what the world undoubtedly needs in these troubled times is a massive epic concept album about the apocalypse, conspiracy theories, and social networking, or networking in general, and this is that album. When did you write this? When did you actually release it?
Nibiru was released getting on for a year ago. I think it was December of last year it came out, because there was a Nibiru prophecy at the time that it was going to hit on New Year's Eve or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'd been cooking up for a while the idea that I wanted to do, well, for years and years actually, that I wanted to do something that was in a way like one of those, like a Jeff Wayne War of the Worlds kind of album. And the collapse of capitalism seemed like a perfect subject matter for this. I'd already made like records about Jeff Wayne, and it seemed time now to really go the full circle. And having not long moved to London, I put Nibiru out and then went to the National Gallery the next day, and found the same Velasquez hanging there that's on the front cover of Nibiru. So everything was well with the world.
Everything tied in. That's cool. So how long did it take you to kind of compile all the different tracks for that? Was it a quick process for you when you decide on a concept, or does it take you quite a while?
It depends on what it is. With Nibiru, it was made, sort of quickly. I think the words were written over like a few weeks, and then the music, which was done on a kind of what was in the flat we were currently in, which is a Casio tone and an electric guitar, and a violin, and then samples of course. So the music was made over the course of maybe a week or something. So maybe like a 3-week process to make the whole thing, but of course formed from long periods of gestation beforehand. Yeah.
And then how did you know when it was finished and sort of had everything in it that you wanted to put into it?
Oh, how do I know when it's finished? I don't know. It's funny because of course everything could be everything could be kind of, especially with electronic music, can be changed all the time, and it's difficult to say when the point is that something is finished. But I guess with something like Nibiru, it's easier to kind of trace because it also has this narration as well. So because I'd written in this instance, I'd written all of the text before I'd started working on the music. That's not the usual way I do things. I often work on text and music and video and blah 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 at the same time. But with Nibiru, I'd written a text because I was thinking actually that it was going to be a theatre piece, which it eventually became, but in a completely different way to how I'd envisioned it being. So I had the text as a kind of measure of, the tracks the pieces of music need to cover the length of this text, and I knew also that the music needed to convey a particular atmosphere conveyed by this text. So I suppose each track of something like Nibiru is trying to make like a particular picture, and I suppose it's the same as whenever someone who's drawing a picture or painting a painting knows when it's finished. It's the same time you do when you're making the piece of music or the piece of music drama or whatever.
Yeah, nice, that makes sense. Was there any element of kind of comedy or sarcasm to it at all, or was it something that you were actually expecting to happen in December of last year?
No, I didn't expect Nibiru to plough into the earth. But there was, on the day when we put the the show on at RADA when we played it at the Tete Festival. There was a very strange news headline this morning that I haven't been able to trace, but evidence that it exists is in the video, because we talk about the news headline that had hit the news, and it said, "Giant rogue planet with star-crowned head plotted lurking just outside solar system 13 times the size of Jupiter." And this was announced without any fanfare as a sort of B headline on the morning that we put in the production, and since then it seems to have, this news headline seems to have vanished. So since then, I've become marginally more convinced that maybe we are going to be demolished, but with that backstory, it would be quite a funny conclusion to the whole saga.
Yeah, for sure. That's quite weird. Awesome. Right. Okay. So was that the last project that you put out then, or has there been stuff since then?
The last project I put out, I've been doing these things called, now that's what I call excessive, and no, that's what I call, yeah. Now that's what I call excessive entertainment, top 10 Musica Magica Antifascisti, which is a kind of response to this new sort of algorithmic wonder that they want to put across the internet to check everybody's copyright law. So it's a kind of joke about making music out of really highly copyrighted, obvious things, but that are rendered into different shapes and unrecognizability and things like that.
Oh, okay. That's cool. So how do you know where the line is then to get away with that kind of thing?
No, but I think it's a fun place to play with, and I think we'll find out, because I think no one knows yet what those lines are, but they're saying things like, that it will scan kind of, it's problematic in terms of like, academic essays that cite things and, that need to use images, and, because they're talking about scanning actual, for like stills from films and things like that. It's a very, very strange situation, but whilst it's going on, we ought to play with it.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a bit more sense. I think when I looked at that one, I took it that you were making fun of the actual pop music rather than this whole kind of copyright thing that you were just talking about. So that's definitely changed the way that I received that one. I'll have to check it out again. What do you did mention something on that about songwriting though? I can't find the quote in my notes now. You said something.
What, something on
the Bandcamp page, I think it was, or through your website. No,
what for the about songwriting for the
encouraging people
thing.
To write better songs or something like that.
Oh yeah, it does say something like that. Yeah. I mean, there is some interesting pop music happening for sure. There's some cool stuff happening, but there's a lot of very weird, sort of naive, sort of vaguely Hitler Youth style, sing to the clouds and the fatherland kind of songwriting happening that I find a little bit disturbing as a tendency, and also also as someone who has spent a lot of time writing songs, I think why not suggest that people try to get better at it and not stay in the same place. I do feel that a lot of art forms have got stuck in a particular place because of kind of what the internet has done, has kind of genreified and fixed everything and everyone.
Yeah.
And and I think it's good to suggest that everyone writes better songs.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of it's got comfortable.
Better songs, but I'm too lazy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's why I was interested in. I was going to ask what you think makes a good song and what you think makes a great song, and whether you had examples of your own as well that you would perhaps put, and maybe what makes a bad song or one that you wouldn't listen to again from the past, perhaps.
I,
So that's a lot of questions at once.
I tend to, if I have a kind of song that I generally dislike, it's songs that have like sort of football-esque choruses where guys join in and sing along with, and the guys all sing along with each other and have a great time. I like for my own taste, I like songs that surprise you, and I like songs that surprise you and twist around in interesting ways, but then retain the integrity as a pop song by kind of twisting back around to things. So I like songs that songs that play with the form in that kind of way, in that it can be kind of, because it's a very simple form, but it can be done in a very sort of labyrinthine way.
Yeah.
And I also like I like songs that have interesting interaction between the words and the music, and songs that play with the rhyming structures and things. There's like a lot of little hidden things and possibilities inside songwriting that I think lots of people don't even know are there. So that's also why I say that people should write better songs, because lots of people haven't actually listened to a lot of the interesting songs that exist, I expect, because especially now in the Spotify age, if you want to find stuff that's kind of outside the mainstream, you really have to look for it. And
yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I was just writing about that today, actually, because there was I don't know if you know much about Stereostatement, but I mostly write music reviews for independent artists, and so I think that it's interesting what you were saying, because it's nice sometimes when there is a touch of familiarity to it, because that's comforting, and then maybe it's the melody or something about it, but then it veers off in some new direction, and maybe it stops, maybe the rhythm changes, and then suddenly the whole song is expressing like the underlying sentiment of it, rather than just the lyrics. And I love it when it could be any genre. It could just be pop, with synths and drums, or it could be like a rock song. I totally agree. I think that's definitely one of the qualities that takes a good song into a great song a lot of the time.
Yes.
What would you say are the sort of like values, perhaps if we were talking about, not all your music is lyrical though, is it? You do write a lot of instrumental music as well. What sort of values do you think help you connect with other artists if you're collaborating or looking for people to work with in theatre, for example? Or
I don't know if I'm working with people. I don't know. It's part of the reason why I do a lot of theatre productions is that it involves working with lots of people and collaborating on ideas and things. I have like lots and lots of ideas, but generally my ideas are improved if I'm working with a bunch of other people as well. So my approach to collaboration is always pretty open, and it's a lot to do with like finding the right people to work with, because if you find the wrong people to work with, it's very difficult. But I always win them round eventually anyway. So
how do you know if you've ended up with, or how do you know who the wrong people are?
Because some of my things are like community theatre, and if you get sometimes groups of people who don't know each other, and you can see that the whole thing would work extremely well if it wasn't for this one person who has some problem or something, and it kind of screws with the mechanics of the whole group. But I think it also, one of the things of being a good director is being able to kind of win people over to the sort of group way of seeing things. So, and I think one of the components, parts of that is once people realise that they're allowed to have ideas, sort of equally within the group as well, then, once people realise that it is a genuine collaborative environment, then they tend to get into the spirit of things, and then it's Christmas every day.
Yeah, nicely put. Have you ever had any issues with confidence with regard to creative stuff, whether when writing with other people or performing or anything like that?
At different times. Most of my issues in confidence have been in life, but performing has been more like a space where I'm in control of life for 40 minutes at a time or something. So I've been doing it since I was very, very young, since I was like, I don't know, 12 maybe or something, and have done it, on and off my whole life in various capacities. When I went back to making music in my early 20s, I made electronic music, and I didn't perform for years because there didn't seem to be any kind of logical way of doing it except for being like the laptop guy pretending to, gently tease knobs on the mixer. And it only struck me because I'd been doing some electronic music with singing on. That was only when it struck me, I could actually perform this material. And from that, I've gone back to being someone who sometimes sits on a stage and plays guitar, and but also whatever instrument happens to be lying about. I pride myself on my capacity as an apocalypse entertainer, that I could entertain a room of a post-apocalyptic society for 4 hours with 2 pieces of wood and nothing else.
That's cool. So you don't have a go-to instrument then, if you had a choice?
No, not really. Sometimes, I really like playing. But you know what? Actually, if I had a go-to instrument that would be my instrument of choice, it would be a really deluxe, like, big disco organ with lots of beats and fills on it and arpeggios and all of that.
A whole band in one.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But one of those little Casios with the beats would do anyway.
that would do the trick as well. Is there anything particular that fascinates you and inspires you to write, or do you just make yourself write, or do you just enjoy writing anyway, even if you're not particularly thinking about something?
I tend to, I don't know, I tend to sort of have ideas for things and then end up having to do them, is more the thing. That's just the way it's always been. I have ideas for things and then I have to follow them through to the bitter end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just get, I don't know, I guess I get inspired by things that, conversations or, and then something comes up and it's like, that would be nice to turn that into a production or something. Yeah. And then it becomes the all-encompassing thing. Or, like, also things like a lot of my work the last few years has been like things I've been asked to do. So at the moment we're working with Lottie and my partner were working with the Cleveland Orchestra on their production of Ariadne off Naxos, making a giant video collage for that. So that's taking up most of the time really, and I did a radio play on request about some animals who go into space. And in some ways I find it more interesting when like someone's asked me to do something and then to have to respond to that rather than kind of go, whoa, where could my imagination take me?
So
and I've really learned that through. Yeah, and I've been teaching recently as well, and I've learnt that students really hate it when you say, hey, you can paint anything you want, and like, God, I don't want to paint anything. I want to go outside.
Yeah, make it multiple choice at least, and then there's a few things to think about. Okay, so do you generally write sort of storytelling stuff then, rather than, you know, personal experiences and feelings or stuff that's going through your head?
Yeah, I definitely conceal all my personal feelings and experiences within layers of collage and hanky panky.
Right. Have you never ever put anything like that into some of your work?
Not in a way that anyone else would ever recognize, no, but always in ways that I recognize. So,
Right.
yeah. Or,
So,
actually, to tell the truth, actually, I've put things in work that, like, people who know me well would recognize. So there's, like, there's private communications and, this sort of thing. And
yeah.
obviously the theatre pieces are, like, reflections on my, my ideas and,
Yeah,
whatever
of course.
philosophical and emotional ideas and that. And I think songwriting is the same, isn't it? A song, even if it's not directly sort of telling and recounting an experience from your life, it obviously still, unless you're deliberately not doing that, it still kind of reflects your philosophical outlook
Yeah.
in some
Yeah,
way.
it must do. What's something that you've learned over the years in doing art and music that you might advise other musicians about, or that's been valuable to you, like, consistently?
Trust no one. No. um, Something I've learned about music and art and that,
Is that too vast of a question?
yeah, maybe. I would say, I would say to never be afraid or stray from the path of constantly avoiding genres. I think that's the thing, because I think if people stop thinking in genres, and then meanwhile capitalism collapses and genres don't matter anyway. But if people stop thinking entirely in genres and just sort of go, now I'm going to make some music, then we
Yeah.
start to hear the music of the future.
Yeah, I like that. Is it something that you've always had, or is that something that you've come to? Was there originally a genre when you were very young that pulled it?
No, not really. I think I listened to just lots of. I think maybe I never really developed a musical taste. I got like really intensely into like Puccini for 3 weeks, and I got really intensely into Iron Maiden for 6 weeks, and just
Okay.
and so I've never understood really the idea of genre and why it's useful, other than to kind of put things into convenient boxes for where to sell it. I think it just limits everything, and yeah, I could rant on and on about that for ages, but I shan't.
Yeah, no, for sure. I saw a video of yours that you'd put up about rejected artist council funding applications. Would you be able to sum that kind of experience up, and is it something that you still apply for?
I don't generally apply in this country anymore, because it started to seem like a fool's errand. Back in the day, I used to receive Arts Council funding and things, but I think it's become something that is very much I don't really know what I can add to the debate, because obviously people do get Arts Council funding, but I certainly don't, and haven't for a long time. And it must be about some boxes that aren't being ticked or something, because all the work that I've submitted for consideration is always, community outreach in a really big way, and very experimental new ideas. And I've got years of experience at running events and tours and rehearsing casts and blah blah blah. But no, in this country, it's proved impossible, and I've started to wonder, obviously, lots of times about the reasons for it, and it's open to conjecture. There are, of course, lots of people who agree wholeheartedly that I should certainly not be receiving Arts Council funding, but they're probably right, because I probably shouldn't be receiving funding from the state. It's probably not. It probably doesn't hang right in the grand scales of heaven, does it?
Well, do you think that you would have done things vastly different if you had funding? Like, are there things that you dreamed of doing that you've not been able to do because of
Yes, I would have done things vastly differently. All my stuff has been done in a total climate of sort of debt and desperation, tours where you don't know if you can get to the next destination, which is 200 miles away tomorrow, because you literally don't have the money to get there, and constant hustling for money and accommodation, and spending more of the time doing that kind of thing rather than actually sitting and concentrating on the work. So all of my work really has been made under circumstances of having to constantly cut corners. And there's a lot of people who say to me about this that, oh no, but don't you feel that those those limitations made them the wonderful pieces that they are? But it's such a ridiculous idea, because they're good whatever as they are. It's silly to say that if you had more resources, it wouldn't have been as good. It's if it had more resources, it would have had more time and thought, and it would have been a different piece, and we would have never seen the other piece. And oh well, resign that one to room 101 or something.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's a tricky one to think about. I know what you mean. A lot of people say the same thing, but it's the same as just recording something, I guess. Just recording it on your phone as opposed to actually doing it properly in the studio. It's the same song, or it's the same idea, but perhaps you can push it a little bit further if there is some funding behind it, which is
exactly. And it just means, like, say for instance, with the piece I did with Mahogany Opera, Mozart versus Machine, which did have some funding behind it, and I was able to really develop this extremely multi-layered piece over about 5 years, and that was a very nice period. And so the piece has like a sort of depth and complexity that I've I've made pieces of equal kind of complexity, but not in such a kind of considered and thought out and communicative kind of way as that one. Because my stuff is often a real sort of jumble of an experience for the audience to sort of get around. But that's also because, my time and resources in doing it have been extremely limited, and I've had actually 30% of the time to write it and the rest of the time just to fret. And
So what's the best thing that could happen, say, in the next 6 months regarding your upcoming projects then? Just kind of...
For me, the best thing that could happen, one of them rich opera patrons who flirted with me back in the olden days. I'll say that again. One of them rich opera patrons who flirted with me back in the olden days. No, what would be nice for me, there's lots of I'll probably just keep doing what I'm doing, but there's lots of nice possibilities. I've laid lots of groundwork in lots of places. Some open-minded record label could come along and release Nibiru on a nice heavyweight vinyl.
Yeah.
Someone with lots of money in the opera world who saw Mozart versus Machine on its tour could get in touch and commission one of my many new, fascinating, magnificent ideas and give me lots of money to make a piece that lots of people will see. Yeah. And in fact, you know what? That's actually the best thing, because the main problem that I have is that, I make lots of stuff, and at various points, large amounts of people have seen it, but it sort of it hasn't happened for a long time. It doesn't happen regularly. I have a new record out and a new single, really deluxe pop single called Valerian Barocik is Dead, and the fact is only about 200 people in total have heard it. So the best thing that could happen for me on a purely pragmatic career type level right now would be that something happens where a large amount of people are exposed to one thing that I've done.
Yeah. And then they can follow the trail back and find everything.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you say is your greatest ambition at the moment?
Yes, I don't know. I don't really have any. I have some. I have some. I basically have ideas for things that I want to do. I don't really see things in terms of ambitions. Really, I see things more as just doing another thing.
Step by step, kind of in the near future stuff rather than bigger picture.
Yeah. Oh, in the near future, we have the Ariadne of Naxos thing in Cleveland in January.
Yeah.
And then we're in New York for a week. Ergo Phizmiz PLC and Deprestival are looking for gigs in New York that week, the week of the 14th. I'll also be spending my birthday in New York, which will be very nice, 39 years old. And then after that, I've kind of, at the moment, I don't really have any immediate projects, but it's more to do with kind of the actual reality of getting another theatre show together without any money to do it and things is
it's all consuming.
And if I've looked around to try to find money to write a new piece, because if I am going to actually write a new piece in terms of the words and the music and probably the imagery, because I would do all three simultaneously, it's it takes a long period of intensive concentration, and I'm kind of mainly teaching at the moment and then doing this techno pantomime. Okay. And in between making anti-fascist cut-up music. Yeah. But for sure, what I really want to do is direct more, very large-scale pieces of music theatre. But I'm not going to do that until someone asks me to, and they will. But it'll take some time.
Yeah, of course. Can people get in touch with you then? Are you open to collaborating and networking and chatting, or are you a bit sort of swamped?
No, I'm really open to hearing people's ideas and whatnot.
What's the best way for anyone to grab you?
Yeah, the best way? Probably the email ergophizmiz@gmail.com, the old reliable.
So just to kind of sum up then, is that because as you're obviously you seem like quite a confident character, and I asked about that earlier. You said it's more off stage, whereas on stage you feel like you have control, and then it's a more relaxed environment for you, which is really interesting for me, because for me it's the exact opposite. I was wondering if you had any advice to give to people who maybe find themselves crippled by insecurity or fear when it comes to, you know, putting their music out there or just doing anything performance or art wise. Is there anything?
Well, in terms of going on stage, I think it's that thing of actually realizing that, you know, once you're like in terms of like the, you know, legality and logistics of the public realm, with the stage, is that once you're on there, then legally it's entirely your territory. So rather than seeing it as a lion's den of you know, attackers, you're actually the lion inside the cage. And in general, people can't touch you. It isn't always true in well, Glasgow, for example, where I've had some short shrift of some very large men. But
Oh my God.
in general, I think that's true. And in terms of people who make music and don't put it out there, the fact is the internet now is such a huge abyss of information that you might as well put your music on the internet anyway, because very few people actually listen to it, but one or two of them might be extremely interesting people who get in touch with them, with you. But if you do put your music on the internet, license it as Creative Commons. And that's the key. If you license your music as Creative Commons, then it can spread, you know, through sampling and manipulation, and the credits always go back to you. And it's the future from the 2000s that never came.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to say or talk about while we're here?
No, that's
cool.
fine.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you. It's really nice to chat with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wish you well and everything. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Cheers.